This story is about a daughter-in-law who gave a refreshing lesson to her mother-in-law, who believed that the daughter-in-law's family should prepare the kimchi for her son's household. Please subscribe and like our channel.
Hello. I am a newlywed who's been married for 6 months. Quite a lot has happened during this short period of marriage. Last week, during a family ancestral rites ceremony at my husband's family home, I woke up in the middle of the night and caused a commotion, then came home. My husband's younger brother's family was there, and they saw me going off on my mother-in-law like a madwoman. Ever since then, my mother-in-law has seemed quite scared when talking to me. Apparently, my brother-in-law told me that it was refreshing to see someone stand up to her. I wonder, did my mother-in-law only treat me poorly because she doesn't see me as a person? I've seen her say ridiculous and irrational things to my brother-in-law multiple times. He must have been hurt by her behavior as well. Whenever there's a gathering at my husband's family home, my mother-in-law gives a lot of work to her daughters-in-law. It's as if she purposely creates more dishes to wash. She can't stand to see my brother-in-law and I washing dishes together. So she assigns one of us to wash dishes and gives the other a different task. It sometimes feels like I got married to become a housemaid. She doesn't do it often, but she does criticize the food I cook and even tries to involve her 2 sons in her criticism, as if she's rallying public opinion against me. Every time I visit my in-laws' house, I get so irritated that I end up taking it out on my husband, which leads to arguments. I often think that if it weren't for my mother-in-law, my husband and I wouldn't have any reasons to fight during our newlywed days. My father-in-law passed away when my husband was about to graduate from college. Until he got sick, my in-laws used to make kimchi at home. He battled the disease for a year before he passed away, and they stopped making kimchi after that. They've been buying kimchi instead, because it's a hassle to make it, and neither my husband nor his younger brother eat much kimchi, so it's not easy to store it. In my family, making kimchi is a family event. My aunts come over to help us make kimchi. These days we buy pre-salted cabbage, but we used to salt it ourselves and spend days making kimchi. I've been helping out since I was young. It's been a bit annoying at times, but also fun. It's enjoyable to work together while eating boiled pork and chatting with relatives. Last year, not long after I got married, and it was time to make kimchi, my mother-in-law asked me how my family makes kimchi. I told her exactly how we do it, and she asked me if I was going to bring some kimchi for her when we make it at my house. I said I would bring her a container full of kimchi, but she scoffed and said that's not real kimchi. Yes, she meant that I should also make kimchi for her house. My brother-in-law's wife doesn't make kimchi separately, so she hasn't heard this from my mother-in-law. So I told her that my family and my aunt's family split the cost of making kimchi, but she dismissed it as a petty matter over such a trivial thing as kimchi. I mentioned that we spend more than $300 just on the ingredients for fermenting fish sauce for kimchi, and she accused me of always bringing up money, questioning if the kimchi tastes better just because we eat it among ourselves. I told her that my family members also feel tired for a few days after making kimchi, and she ignored me for the whole day. She said she wouldn't eat our kimchi because it's dirty and cheap, claiming that it's a daughter-in-law's responsibility to take care of her in-law's kimchi making, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. I wondered if there was such a tradition. After that incident, my mother-in-law subtly belittled the fact that my mother has been a stay-at-home mom. She demeaned my mother, saying that stay-at-home moms don't have anything to do. When I retaliated by saying that my father was capable enough, that our family lived comfortably with my mother, taking care of the housework and children's education, she glared at me. When I came home, I said to my husband that his mother was crazy. And we had a big fight. He argued that it was not right to call his mother crazy. And I was upset that he didn't stand up for my mom when his mother was belittling her. Since the end of last year, I've been visiting my in-laws less frequently. I naturally began to avoid going as my feelings were hurt. Unless it's something important, my husband would go alone. And I would make excuses not to go. My husband knew I was making excuses, but he let it slide. There have been a few minor troubles with my mother-in-law since then. But I managed to cope by reducing my visits to her house as much as possible. More than troubles, there were incidents that upset me and caused me stress because of her. Anyway, last weekend was the ancestral rites ceremony for my father-in-law. It happened to be on a Saturday. And I went to my in-laws' house early in the morning to prepare food for the ceremony. I did everything without complaining, thinking I was doing it for the grandfather of my future child. My husband helped too. My brother-in-law's family, who usually works on weekends, arrived just in time for the ceremony. I didn't mind that either, because my brother-in-law and I have been close and understanding of each other. He got married 3 years before I did, so I knew he had been through a lot. After the ceremony, my brother-in-law and niece slept in a small room. My husband and his younger brother slept in the master room. And I ended up sleeping in the living room with my mother-in-law. My husband came out of the room to sleep in the living room because it was hot. He slept between my mother-in-law and me, but I woke up because it was too cold. I couldn't sleep because it was cold. So I checked if I had turned down the temperature of the electric heating pad. It turned out that my side was turned off. My mother-in-law woke up at the sound of me adjusting the heating pad. When she asked what I was doing, I told her that I was cold. So I turned on the heating pad. She insisted that I turn it off again, arguing that the boiler was on and the room should be warm. But if it was that warm, shouldn't she have turned off the entire heating pad? Why did she only turn off my side and then say it's warm? So I don't need to use the heating pad? I lay down again, but the heating pad didn't warm up. When I checked again, my side was turned off again. I was so angry that I exploded. I asked her why she kept turning off my side. And she got annoyed, questioning why I kept wasting electricity by turning on the heating pad when it wasn't even cold. So I said I would turn off the heating pad because it was warm, and yanked the cord out. And then I woke up my husband. I told him I couldn't sleep because it was cold and suggested we go into the bedroom to sleep. My mother-in-law yelled, asking what I was doing. I told my husband to listen, asking him if his mother hadn't turned off my side of the heating pad. She said she had turned it off because she was hot, which made no sense. I was so angry that I yelled at her, asking why she left her side on. I asked her if she hated to see her daughter-in-law, who had worked hard all day, preparing food for the ancestral rites, sleeping warmly. I was so furious that I yelled at my husband that I couldn't sleep here because it was too cold, and that we should go home and sleep. I was a bit out of my mind then, so I didn't realize it. But it seems I yelled very loudly. I could hear my niece crying in the room, and my brother-in-law came out too. I kept shouting at my mother-in-law, asking her if daughters-in-law were only people to exploit for labor, and if she grudged even the electricity for the heating pad for a daughter-in-law who had worked hard all day. My mother-in-law retorted, asking me, how dare I yell at her like that, calling me rude. I retorted, asking if I should treat a mother-in-law who turned off only my side of the heating pad in this freezing weather as a person. When my husband asked his mother if she really did that, she didn't answer. My brother-in-law also said that it was too much, and that he was embarrassed to face his in-laws because of her. My mother-in-law suddenly burst into tears. saying that her children don't recognize her as their mother just because they got married. And what's the point of living like this? I told my husband that if we stayed here, I would just keep yelling at his mother, so we should leave. So we came home. And then the day before yesterday, I got a call from my mother-in-law. She hesitated at first, but then she asked if I had to pick a fight and get angry over the heating pad, when it wasn't even that cold that day. I was speechless and forced myself to ask why she turned off only my side of the heating pad. She tried to beat around the bush, so I told her to stop evading the question and answer me. She didn't say anything. I asked her if she knew who would make side dishes for her when she gets old, who would clean her house even once, who would take her to the hospital when she gets sick, and who would prepare her funeral. I told her that it's my brother-in-law and me, and she's already made us feel bad towards her. I said when the time comes for us to live together, I will make sure she sleeps in an air-conditioned room. My brother-in-law has been trembling in front of her since before we got married. So it would be the same if he lives with her. I told my husband about the phone call with his mother that evening, and he just stayed silent. And when I told my brother-in-law about it while talking to him yesterday, he said my husband was really amazing. He said he had never been able to stand up to his mother, and I was too refreshing. The woman who nagged me for taking a long shower after the ancestral rites dinner last weekend, saying I don't know how to save water, was the one who triggered me to explode. From now on, if we divorce, there will be no favor for my mother-in-law. I told my husband as well. I asked him how he would feel if he received the same treatment from my parents, and he couldn't answer, just sighed. I don't think I'll have to go to my in-laws or see my mother-in-law for a while. It seems that the mother-in-law enjoys exploiting her daughter-in-law and giving her a hard time. But the daughter-in-law handled it well. There are more people than I think who don't understand that if they bother others, it will eventually come back to haunt them.